Welcome to another edition of Dungeons and Social Distancing with Nerdarchy.
Today we discuss play a 0th level character in 5th edition D&D.
Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
If you want more D&D videos, level up and hit that subscribe button.
And if you want those Nerdarchy videos and all their XP, make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
Today we actually have a bit of a GM 911 video request, if you would. Before we jump into that, I just want to let you know, if you would like to continue to support Nerdarchy and get cool stuff as well, there is Out of the Box Encounters. It's our first physical product. The book is now open for pre-order. You can download the PDF. There will be a link in the description. It is 55 fun, fantastic encounters by our lead game designer on that one, Mike Gould. I think you're going to really dig it, and do yourself a favor and check it out.
So we have this request that comes in from Paul, and it says, could you do a video on how you would run a session or two for pre-level 1 characters? For example, a wizard who is still an apprentice, a sorcerer who is yet to discover their powers, a fighter who is still training under a master swordsman, etc., and what could happen that would bring them together when they start at level 1?
Okay, so I feel like we're going to handle this, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Not exactly how Paul requested, because we're going to talk about in the way that I've seen it executed within the D&D community that we've seen. And also, it goes way back, right? Level 0 is not a new concept. I would say it goes all the way back to 1st edition, because there was actually an adventure called Treasure Hunt that was for 0th level and 1st level characters. Which if you Google that, you'll probably find it. 1st edition, level 0 adventure, Treasure Hunt will come up.
All right, so now I guess you would ask the question of what is the point in running a 0th level adventure?
So, sometimes players just want to play the scrub, the peon, the person that hasn't really done anything yet, and they really don't have the training. And I've seen this played out where the DM will run this style of adventure, and it's through that adventure that they actually acquire that class, that 1st class level. And the circumstances of the adventure and the events that occur are which will actually determine what character class they go into, whether it's because of what aptitudes they had or maybe something that happened during the adventure.
So you could do a lot of kind of stuff with this and really begin cultivating many things, perhaps that you've got, whether it's an arcane academy or what have you, perhaps you're setting things up and the players haven't made a decision. And you've got the ability to say, okay, you're going to, through what choices you make will determine what kind of stat bonuses you have to play with, what kind of classes that you have access to, what proficiencies that you're going to get, what relationships you're going to form, adversaries that you might, develop all through play. And this could be either a one-shot or a campaign, your kind of choice. I think the campaign gets difficult because if you're playing, a little bit, close to the chest, hit points are probably going to be really low on something like this, unless you're willing to play with a more modified system, more modified than what we're already talking.
Yeah, I think it can work as a one-shot. I think it also can work as a campaign. Like, this is just how you got started. This is like, it's going to be a little more random, right? Depending on what method you use. If you use the method that what you do will determine what character classes you are, then absolutely it's going to be more random, and you might end up playing something you weren't excited to play, or maybe you'll unexpectedly discover that this is a lot of fun and you're enjoying it and it's a pleasant surprise. If you're doing more like you said, well, you're already the apprentice of the thing, then you kind of know what you're going to do anyway. When you do it that way, I see less of a point in doing the 0th level thing.
But if you do it random, the attachment could be more about who the character is, more attached to your background, bonds, ideals, flaws, than it is about what specifically your character class is giving you. And I think those kind of things, could really make the game shine and stand out, so much more. In so many different stories and novels and movies, you've got these, story arcs where youngsters start off doing something, and we get to see, where they eventually go. Perhaps you could say, book one or the first half of book one, maybe, who knows, of Harry Potter, is their zeroth level, and when they graduate, okay, now they're officially wizards, and they can begin doing more and what have you. You could do that kind of stuff that is more, not as much harm is, directly involved in what's going on. It's more about, the relationships and what have you. And then you don't have to worry so much about the hit points, because there is no danger factor until you get to the end, when you've actually got oh my God, here's this thing that could kill me. I think those things really make for a really intriguing and inventive story.
Well, I will say the downside to that is there's no mystery as to what character class people is going to be.
Well,
You're gonna be a
from
wizard. You're gonna be a wizard. They even say it, you're a wizard, Harry. You're a wizard.
yes, from that aspect. But, what if, what if it is open to more things? You've got, you know, uh, you've got areas of martial, you've got areas of magic, and you've got, areas of exploration, that you could, begin looking at. And you get to, have classes where you dabble in all of them. And, maybe you get to build your own thing out of it. Maybe that determines of, well, you decided you wanted swords and magic. Well, that means, you're going to play, a blade singer. That's what it is that you're going to do. Or maybe you're an eldritch knight. Depends upon where you choose to focus. So, like, those kind of things could be fun to, experiment and play with if you've got an imaginative group and an imaginative.
Well, I see it more as a game of circumstance. Like when you take zeroth level characters, the idea is they really are regular people,
Mm-hmm.
and prior to adventuring, they literally just came off the farm, or they haven't really done anything yet, and circumstances has thrust this group together, and because of that, you go on an adventure. At the other side of this adventure, the idea is you will come out with a class level, and the things that you did during that adventure will probably determine that, and that might endear you even more to that character class, even though it wasn't one you thought you would want to play, but because like you really had the work to do it and you discovered it during gameplay, uh, alongside the character, as the player. So that part of it can be really cool. Now, moving away from, some of the concepts of why you would do it, and the story elements of it. What about mechanically? How are we going to do this? Because technically there is no zeroth level.
So there's a couple things that you really need to look at. And I think most importantly, because race and background, and I'm assuming that, you're making those choices, and that, you might just be considered a step above the commoner who has 4 hit points. You have to handle hit points in some way, and you have to handle, the proficiency modifier or lack thereof. So I would say if you're going to do a 0th level adventure, you would pick your race, you'd pick your background, and because you're technically proficient in certain skills, that you would get from them, I would set your proficiency modifier to 1, and then you'd have to figure out hit points. Now, if you really don't want to get into proficiency modifier a difference, you could just say, well, you don't have it yet. You just have those skills, and when you do gain level 1, you will be proficient in them. But hit points, you can either do, what, you with hit points, you could either take the 4 hit points that a commoner has and just say, okay, everybody gets this, and you add your Constitution modifier, to it, and you've got an extra die that you'll have to, finagle with later. You'll have, when you're 20th level, you'll have 21 hit dice. Or you could totally just say, a commoner has a D8, So everybody starts off with that. It winds up giving you that much more survivability because you could technically have, as high, if you've got a, high con race, you could wind up with 11 hit points as a 0th level character, far more than any wizard is really going to get. Um, but these things give you the capability of, you know, having that adventure and not just dying because, oh, let's just play with con mod. Oh, you have a negative con mod, you're dead, or minimum of one. Like these things offer, such greater threats of survivability. Oh, you have 1 hit point is your max. Well, if you take 2 damage, you're just dead, because you're at negative your max. That those kind of adventures, I don't think anybody really wants to get into. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I would say you choose a background, you have your race, you get everything you get from those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now the only way to actually get weapon proficiencies is via race, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few of them that do get some. So, any of the dwarves, the elves are going to give you proficiencies with weapons. Gith, I believe you can get some proficiencies with weapons as well as a Gith Yankee. There might be some other things. There might even be some races where you get natural weapons, like at the Tabaxi. Like you have no idea how to use a dagger, but you can use your claws, right? Which makes sense. Like, so you have no weapon proficiencies. You get the proficiencies from race. You get the proficiencies from background. I would not do proficiency 0, but I would do either half or regular. I do like the idea of half because you are less than a first level character at this point.
So you say a 1?
A 1. I think that's perfectly fine. Hit points, I would give them commoner hit points. Commoner hit points are 4 plus your Constitution modifier. So hey, if you rock that hill dwarf, you could have 8 hit points at first level and be super tanky and tough. Or if you're a human, you could actually do pretty well as well. You could end up with like I think 9 hit points or something, depending on where you place your stats. And if you take the tough feat as your variant, so there's things like that. And then maybe do stats as you could do stats as normal, or if you wanted to go hard mode and be like, you're a commoner, with your racial adjustments after your first adventure will actually discover what your stats are. And you kind of like discover through play. And the DM has some weird system for tracking like what things you did well and what things you did poorly at. And that might determine your stats. So you could toy with it that way. It all depends on how random you want to be with it.
Yeah,
But I think it could be rewarding and a fun game.
Yeah, it could definitely go in a lot of different directions. Assigning stats based on how you play. You could have a very wonky character of like, well, my wizard talks to everything, so therefore my my DM assigned me my highest modifier was charisma. Well, this stinks. I'm not a very good wizard. But you know what? People like me, darn it.
Well, anyway, this was fun. And if you enjoyed it, why don't you take a look at this video, how to make a low-level D&D adventure exciting. It's one of our GM 911s.
Did you know that we create material for players and DMs alike over on Patreon?
But that's not all. We do weekly only patron live chats. We do monthly giveaways. Our patrons are automatically entered and more.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.
stay nerdy.